Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to look at an important creative activity, and that's hand knitting. Ancient knit garments have been found in many different countries, showing that knitting is a global activity with a long history. When someone says the word knitting, we might well picture an elderly person, a grandmother perhaps, sitting by the fire knitting garments for themselves or other members of the family. It's a homely image, but one that may lead you to feel that knitting is an activity of the past, and indeed, during the previous decade, it was one of the skills that was predicted to vanish from everyday life. For although humans have been sewn and knitted their old clothing for a very long time, many of these craft-based skills went into decline when industrial machines took over, mainly because they were no longer passed down from one generation to another. However, that's unchanging, and interest in knitting classes in many countries is actually rising as more and more people are seeking formal instruction in the skill. With that trend, we are also seeing an increase in the sales figures for knitting equipment. So why do people want to be taught to knit at the time when a machine can readily do the job for them? The answer is that knitting as a handicraft has numerous benefits for those doing it. Let's consider what some of these might be. Why many people knit garments in the past because they couldn't afford to buy clothes. It's still true today that knitting can be helpful if you are experiencing economic hardship. If you have several children who all need warm winter clothes, knitting may save you a lot of money. And the results of knitting your own clothes can be very rewarding, even though the skills you need to get going are really quite basic and the financial outlay is minimal. Now let's look back a bit to early knitting activities. In fact, no one really knows when knitting first began, but archaeological remains have disclosed plenty of information for us to think about. One of the interesting things about knitting is that the earliest pieces of clothing that have been found suggest that most of the items produced were round rather than flat. Discoveries from the 3rd and the 4th century in Egypt show that things like socks and gloves that were needed to keep hands and feet warm were knitted in one piece using 4 or 5 needles. That's very different from most knitting patterns today, which only require 2.